What's the worst example of attention-seeking behavior you've seen? Story 1. My sister once unconvincingly faked falling down a flight of stairs during Thanksgiving. Then when she was done flopping around, she just stayed at the bottom in the fetal position for a good 15 minutes. Eventually, she got up when pie was served. We were having a huge Thanksgiving with all the extended family over, and she hated that the adults that usually adored her were ignoring her for the younger kids. She was like 12 at the time, and every year our grandma tries to get her to recreate it, but she won't. Story 2. I have a friend who is really into cosplay. She has an Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc., all devoted to her cosplay. She constantly begs and reminds people to follow her on various social media platforms. That isn't so bad. But if someone comments on a photo of her in a costume, even if it's something innocuous like, wow, awesome costume, she will jump on them about being a stalker and making lewd comments about her photos. She'll post these screen captures of totally innocent conversations with her fans whom, remember, she asked to follow her and be like, I got another stalker. It got so bad that at one point she accused a guy at con of stalking her around and being threatening. It was a small con, he just happened to be in a lot of the same rooms. But she was taking pictures of him the whole time who was stalking whom and posted them on the internet. The guy actually sent her a letter from a lawyer telling her to take that down, or he would sue her for libel or false accusation of a crime. She had the audacity to post it all over Facebook, basically pulling the I'm a poor, innocent female being harassed by a guy card. She even did a GoFundMe to try and raise the money to get a lawyer. No one gave her a dime because none of us fell for her bullshit anymore. Story 3. I knew a guy who lied about his mother's death in class at school. He said she died that morning, but she would have wanted him to go to his classes. We all knew it was a lie, and it was confirmed a few weeks later. He denied ever saying his mother had died. Story 4. I went to high school with a girl that had a new severe health problem every week. I think she was supposed to have died several times throughout high school. Some examples are when I met her, she told me she had brain cancer, she had appendicitis at least twice, she tried to say her acne was smallpox brain cancer again. When everybody forgot about the first one, claimed she burned her tongue so bad that everything tasted like ash to her. Now, claimed to be allergic to the school's AC and would start these ridiculously fake coughing fits if she walked under a vent. Would randomly wear bandage sand eye patch for no discernible reason. Story 5. My baby cousin of about 3 or 4 months, whenever it wants something it just cries, and everybody comes running to him to do things for him like he can't do it for himself or something. Story 6. Worst attention-seeking behavior I've seen was probably the documentary. The woman who wasn't there about Alicia Estevez who claimed to be a 911 survivor hero and that her husband died in the attack. She actually had no husband. She became heavily involved in the World Trade Center Survivors Network and basically took over. Really sickening. Story 7. My little brother used to run face first into things if people weren't paying enough attention to him. At the time we thought he was blind stupid, but he told me later in life he did it for attention. Story 8. Like, share if you love God, want world peace, want this little child's cancer to be cured, help the homeless, etc. Ignore if you're a devil worshiper who eats babies and punches old ladies for fun. Story 9. A girl in my class used to tell everyone she modeled for Oscar de la Renta, Louis Vuitton, Prada, etc., etc. Bearing in mind she was a short, slightly pudgy, red-faced 13-year-old. Nobody believed her, obviously, but nobody really said anything to her. She used to post pictures online of her in her living room or bedroom, pretending like she was in a photo shoot. Then one day, she uploaded a picture of some bikini-clad model and claimed it was her. You couldn't see the model's face in the picture. It was so utterly embarrassing. The picture had like 200 comments before she deleted it. I almost felt bad for her, but for God's sake, what did she expect? Story 10. Girl I used to know, but moved to California, always posts pictures of her on some island. She makes it seem like she's always on vacation, but she went to that place for a week 4 years ago and took literally 2,000 pictures of her in different bikinis. Her entire Instagram has like 900 pictures of that week. She grew up poor, so I get it, she wants her friends back home to think she's living large, but she's most definitely not, and it's kind of sad to watch. Story 11. I have a friend who posts very sexy, borderline porny pictures of herself on Tinder. Then, when Tinder creeps talk to her and tell her she's hot, she posts their exchanges on Facebook and talks about how men are trash who only see her as object. She gets attention for being sexy and half-naked. Then she gets bonus attention for complaining that all anyone talks about is how she's sexy and half-naked. Story 12. A girl at my school used to say that Jesus visited her at night. She even said she had cancer, which was just plain disrespectful, as one of her closest friends had recently been fighting cancer. Story 13. This one girl in one of my classes always lets out the most high-pitched, fake-sounding, loud sneezes, and then quickly looks around to see if anyone noticed, Might be believable if she didn't do it at least 5 times each class. Story 14, my dog limps for attention or food. She forgets which leg is hurt and randomly switches extremities. I've even caught her running when she thought I wasn't looking during one of her attention-seeking episodes. She's the best. Story 15, hey, race one that stuck with me. There was a girl in 6th grade named Elizabeth. Annoying AF and no one like her. You know the type, the one that acts like they're too good for people and then cry about it. But when you invite them, all of a sudden they're too cool to join in. Anyways, 6th grade was when 911 happened. Yes, it was shocking, and yes, the school day was brought to a standstill, and we were allowed to watch the news. Some classmates cried because of the worry and fear that was going through the air, and some cried because they legit had family members in around the area of attacks. Here comes Elizabeth, just start bawling 30 minutes in a class, and after all the legit people were crying, teacher escorted her out and asked her if she needed anything. She said she was worried about her family and had to call them. Turns out her closest family to the attacks were in Georgia. Some people called her out on it later that week, and she admitted she was doing it for attention, and then started crying again because people were attacking her. There's got to be something seriously up there to think exploiting such an event to get attention is a good idea. Story 16, met 2 women at a hardware convention at a booth next to ours. They were cool. Boss and I took them to lunch, and during lunch, if conversation shifted focus toward the first woman, the second woman would get painful back spasms. Of course, conversation halted, as we asked helplessly if she was okay, if there's anything we can do. Politely she'd say it's okay, and went into a long story of a harrowing injury years ago. We hang on every word, and after a few, wow, glad you're okay, conversation shifted to me, my boss, injured woman. Then as soon as we paid attention to the first woman, boom, back spasms. Conversation halts. Are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. By the 3rd or 4th time, it was obvious she was intentionally directing conversation away from her more attractive colleague. Back at the booth, she had no trouble lifting furniture and picking things off the ground. Bizarre. Story 17, girlfriend's best friend would claim her daughter was getting molested by her ex-husband and the girl's biological father. She claimed to have called CPS, but would say, oh, it takes time in our state, when nothing would happen. When my girlfriend said she'd call CPS herself, her friend quickly stopped mentioning it. This friend of hers would also claim serious diseases like cancer that would quickly be forgotten and never mentioned again. Story 18, I went to school with a guy who was cast in the lead role in a local low-budget movie. One night, I was at a bar. He went walking up to a table full of girls and said, hey ladies, anybody want my autograph? With the most smarmy grin you ever saw. Story 19, girl I know on Facebook regularly posts statuses like hate life, why can't death come quicker, etc. Even better, she ignores all comments on those statuses and deletes any that recommend getting help or offering it. Story 20, a girl in my school had a dad that was always showing up at school at random times of the school week. And it was weird, found out by listening in on some teachers that the girl was texting her dad begging him to bring her more money for food and snacks because she was running out. Other kids would ask her for snacks, and she wanted them to like her so much she'd just give her money away. Story 21, had a girl back in high school claim she couldn't feel. Her nerve endings were fried from some trauma she had or something, and that's why she couldn't be tickled ick about the trauma thing. But she seems pretty vanilla upper-class girl. Of course, her friends would help her try and perpetuate this to the point that a small group of guys in her class would make a habit of randomly throwing things at the back of her head, those eraser caps for pencils and stuff that was noticeable to be hit by. Anytime she'd turn around, they'd shout, I thought you couldn't feel, usually with some bullshit reply like it caused my head to recoil forward or I'm hyper-aware of my surroundings and heard it coming. This all became such a joke among everyone in these classes that even teachers would bring up when she forgot about this little lie. Like once when she bumped her hip on a table edge and seemed in pain, the teacher asked, oh, are you okay? Wait, I thought you couldn't feel. The girl instantly tried playing it off as my teacher gave her a really face. Story 22, this one girl would always fake faint in front of the seniors, so they would help her. The first time it happened, she developed a crush on one of them. So whenever he passes by, she'd fake faint. Story 23, I've seen some truly terrible behavior at weddings. Mothers wearing white, mothers dressed like they're going to a funeral, exes of the bridegroom getting engaged to their current so, mothers giving speeches about what it was like to have their son inside them, gross fathers that go up and rant about how much they sacrificed for their family, and basically how it was all their doing that their kid turned out the way she did, their mother did nothing, etc. Bridesmaids that will up a bridesmaid's dress, bought the dress, took it to a seamstress, and basically turned it into something completely different because the bride couldn't be sexier than her, and brothers of the couple announcing they were gay. The industry is an interesting one for sure. Story 24, a girl I knew in high school and rode on my bus route started herself down a sort of self-destructive track of life and would flirt with any and every guy she was near. I specifically remember her cooing to a group of guys about how super flexible she was. Wink, wink. She then proceeded to show an example of this by doing an overly complicated movement that ended in basically sitting cross-legged. Think crisscross applesauce, kids. The guys weren't too impressed. Story 25 of my elementary school, there was a deep depression in the ground between two portables. After a heavy rain, this area would become very large puddle, about 10 feet in circumference and maybe a foot and a half in depth at its deepest point. One day, while playing around near it, this kid Jeremy fell into it. Instead of getting out, he started swimming in it. As best a person can swim in a large mud puddle, he was doing comically exaggerated backstrokes, doggy paddles, and synchronized swimming routines in front of a laughing crowd before a yard monitor yanked him out of it. Definitely attention-seeking, but also hilarious. Story 26, the lowest. When a distant relative upstages the widow at a funeral, had an aunt like that who was a second wife that had only recently married into the family, lived 1,000 miles away, had met Grandpa 3 times in her life. During the viewing at the funeral home, she stood in the middle of the room and was building up to a dramatic ball. Before it really got underway, I hailed the staff, who realized exactly what was brewing and escorted us to a back room with glasses of water and tissues. I held her hand and nodded, looking in her eyes patiently throughout half an hour of this woman feeling sorry for herself. She wasn't mourning the deceased or expressing sympathy for her husband's loss. It was a me sob session, insufferable. Suffered through that outburst anyway was thinking of my grandmother who had lost her husband of 60 years. Thinking of my father, his brothers, miss my grandfather too, had been spending holidays with the grandparents, and dang it, no matter how long they live, it's never long enough. If I hadn't fed that aunt's need for attention, she either would have caused a scene, or else someone who felt an even greater loss would have had to endure her. More likely it would have been ugly. That day felt like keeping the peace robbed the ceremony of its closure. Have seen other attention seekers who cause conflicts during somebody else's terminal cancer, who steal the spotlight when someone passes away. It's never pretty. Sometimes good people have bad moments during genuine grief, and that's understandable. But when someone so far removed acts out despite being old enough to know better, that's the worst. Story 27, a girl in my office dresses. Too sexy for work to put it as nice as possible. She wears really tight short dresses and 4 heels daily. She's also got massive breast implants. She has double monitors, and both of her screensavers are pictures of herself chest up, barely covering anything. She makes it a point to leave her screen available for anyone to see when she's away from her desk. It's totally weird and inappropriate for work. Sometimes I feel so sorry for her. I want to hug her and tell her that's not how you get attention. Story 28, not a specific example, but whenever a person in a group setting is looking at their phone and laughs or gasps dramatically and then looks around expecting someone else to ask what's so funny or what happened. Story 29, ex-roommate waited for all of us to be in the house before letting out the loudest, largest wails. The other roommates and I go to see what's wrong, and she tells us she has an ectopic pregnancy. While everyone else is comforting her, I asked, didn't you last have 10 months ago? I was correct, and still the somehow. Worst part was she was training to be a doctor. Story 30, oh man, I've been waiting for the opportunity to tell this story. I work as an EMT in a fairly upper middle class area. It was Christmas Eve, and we were called to a home in town for an unconscious person. As we walked in, I noticed that there were a lot of people in the kitchen dining room, and there was a woman lying motionless on the floor. People weren't really freaking out, and everyone was sort of going about their business, which was definitely strange. Before we can even begin assessing, the daughter-in-law loudly tells us that she thinks that the patient is faking. Well, the patient did not like this one bit, and sat straight up and yelled, "How dare you accuse me of that?" I got the impression that this was not the first time something like this had happened. Edit in quotation. Story 31. I had a friend, no longer one, thankfully, who lied about trying to commit suicide around 2 weeks after a close friend's death. She knew we were all very fragile about anything death-related and used it to turn the spotlight back on her. I realized it was fake the second she shared it. We were in an open mic venue, and she came up to our large group after reading a stupid poem that hinted at it and then said, "I tried to kill myself, guys," very loudly. "I've been suicidal before." You don't announce it to the world. The day she apparently tried was when she was sitting for a teacher in their home. She wouldn't have done it there if she was truly going to try. Usually you want to do it in secret, not in different person's home while you watch their pet. She also tried to say she was going to try again, but when cops showed up to her dorm, she was sitting on her computer playing games. So she lied about everything. She still denied it and said everything was true. It was all a lie. She told everyone I was out to get her because I suggested to the group it was a lie. Group taking sides, etc. We all never met up again as a group. All because she lied up her to get our attention when the spotlight wasn't on her due to our friend's death, Sloan. If you read this, I hope you know you're still a piece of, I'm glad you were stuck in Yuma where you belong. I live with a girl who wanted to date another of her housemates. He legit had celiac disease. So she faked a gluten allergy to be able to eat with him, go grocery shopping with him, etc. She ate things with wheat in them whenever he wasn't around, and then eventually started eating it again because my doctor said I lost too much weight. That's the tip of the iceberg. Edit more stories. 1. She claimed a drug-dealing ex-boyfriend keyed her car, but I'm sure she did it herself. 2. She claimed that the only reason her family is in this country is because her parents came here on their honeymoon and avoided being deported until they had a baby her. 3. She decided to move out of the house. We asked around trying to find someone to take over her room, so we didn't live with a random. One girl we asked was a chick this boyfriend of hers had flirted with in Frosh Week, almost 2 years before. She magically didn't have to move anymore, until a week later when her mom said she had to for her. There's other small stuff like viciously texting other girls who talk to her boyfriend, being super jealous, crying at parties, spreading rumors, that sort of thing, but it's pretty tame compared to the other stuff. She was just all around insane and insecure. I'm sure there's more, but it's been more than 5 years since I've even seen her, so I'm sure I'm forgetting some. Story 32 friend of mine and I went over to his new GF's place. She had a goth roomie who was also pretty desperate to be the center of attention. We all pretty much ignored her attempts to make every convo about her. At one point, she comes out of the back and keeps going on and on about her new blood red lipstick, and isn't it great, and so blood red, and over. And while later someone goes to use the bathroom and a razor is on the sink, she superficially cut her lips to get them to bleed and smeared it around for attention. Story 33 storytime YouTubers like Tana Monjo. Yeah, some storytimes are funny, but when you embellish the out of them and have some crazy stalker and almost die 5 times a week, it starts to get annoying like we get at you like attention. Story 34 A girl I went to high school with lied about having brain cancer to get the attention of a guy she liked. He started spending lots of time and energy on her, which is what she wanted because his mom was also fighting cancer. Eventually, it came out that she was lying and he was furious, so he stopped talking to her altogether. That pissed her off, and a few weeks later, she tried to get him arrested by saying he brought a gun to school. She even faked texts between the two of them in which he told her who he was going to shoot first. Of course, he didn't have a gun, so he wasn't arrested. Somehow she never got in any trouble for this. The best part, after high school they reconnected, and now they're married. Story 35 People who go on mission trips to a destination where people usually go on vacation and then tell every living and non-living thing out there that they went on a mission trip. Story 36 There's a disorder called Munchchowen syndrome, which is basically an extreme compulsion to lie and fake illness in order to gain attention, pretty much a version of pathological lying. Now that in itself doesn't sound too bad, but it gets worse. There's also Munchchowen syndrome by proxy. As the name suggests, it also involves lying to gain attention. However, instead of lying about yourself, you lie about someone. The most common sufferers of MSBP are mothers, and the victims are their children. The children are of course young, since they don't understand what their mother is doing. Some of the examples I've seen are repeated strangulation, suffocation, starvation, poisoning, drugging with medication, and faking serious illnesses in their child such as cancer. And the thing is, you have to wonder if the mothers can be blamed. They have a mental disorder and might not realize what they're doing is wrong. But it still is overall tragic and awful that children have to suffer at the hands of someone they love. Story 37 My sister. She has to be the center of attention in literally every situation. Mother's Day trip for my mom, where I pay everything for mom, and sis invites herself along, pays nothing, then proceeds to get mad at me and not talk to me for 6 whole hours when I made a joke during some story she was telling. So then my mom feels like she has to smooth things over. I pieced out to the pool and got drunk because I'm on vacation. Mom ended up drinking with me at the pool while sis pouted in the hotel room. She ended up texting us like 3 hours later to see where we were since we hadn't checked on her. Story 38 A girl in my school committed suicide. I never knew her and didn't claim I did. However, what's sad is before she died ID never heard of her. But after she died, so many people I knew claimed that they were her best friend and constantly posted on Facebook about it. One girl in particular I'm pretty sure didn't even know her, but made statuses like every day pretending they were best friends. Story 39 A friend of mine had fairly serious Crohn's disease and would constantly post really upsetting, dramatic posts on Facebook about how much pain she was in, how badly her life was being affected by her disease, all true. To be fair, the annoying part was that she'd post these 3 to 4 times a week, And whenever anyone would mention it to her to ask how she was feeling, how we could help out, etc., she would get really angry, saying she didn't want to talk about it, and then yell at us for intruding on her personal life. If you want to keep it private, don't spill your guts, pun all over Facebook about it every day. So attention-seeking, luckily she matured and knocked it off one of my juniors like this. He wished himself happy birthday with a shirtless pic of himself, then posted a rant about getting his post removed for pornography content. Somebody reported him. He accused a girl for stalking him on Facebook. Her parents were conservatives. She never had a Facebook account. He considers himself a very big philosopher. He called himself Socrates, then deleted it because he spelled it wrong, and somebody posted a screenshot in his comment. Then he went on to make a post about grammar Nazis. Then people checked throughout his history and posted the screenshots when he acted like a grammar Nazi. He deleted his post and then made a post about getting bullied. He has an Instagram account where he calls himself a model, where he insults anyone who makes a comment, no matter positive or negative. He accuses girls of being a stalker and boys for being jealous. He fell during his graduation and then write it off being a joke. The guy was bleeding. He refused a nurse from helping her. He made a post about getting in a fight during his graduation, trying to defend a girl. He marked the post so none of the people from school could see it. His brother shared it with us. The comments were hilarious. His Instagram is full of shirtless pic with some cringy self-quote. He also watermarks all his pics. The guy is a serious nut job with some serious mental problems. The guy is desperate as I follow him only for the hilarity of his posts. Story 40. I ran away from home a few months ago and had to leave my beloved 11-year-old cat behind. I can't have cats at the place where I live now. My dad emailed my boyfriend last week to tell me that my cat had to be put down. I was devastated, but he's old and sickly, so I wasn't surprised. I started grieving for him. 2 days after I got the email, my boyfriend showed me something on Facebook. He never unfriended my mom, so her stuff still shows up to him from time to time. My mom posted a picture of my cat from that day and a very casual status about taking him to get a blood test. My cat was obviously still alive. My emotions changed from sadness to relief, then from relief to anger. My dad told me my cat was dead just to hurt me and get my attention. What the actual? Story 41. There's a girl at my school who dresses up as Harley Quinn, Suicide Squad every single day. She does the makeup, dyed her hair, and either wears the Suicide Squad promo poster outfit or the jail outfit. She's been doing this since the movie came out. Story 42. I have an aunt who is the most selfish, attention-seeking excuse for a human. She's 60 years old. She literally spent her entire life unemployed calling her grown-up kids. And my mom, her sister, to play her violin. To begin with, she claims she experiences these icy, deep, sharp cutting pains in her fingers and toes. Told her it's called pins and needles, but she insisted that head fingers were basically falling off. Also claims that she has a deep-rooted fear of laptops and phones. It gave her such anxiety, like my heart was pumping when the phone rang. Also is too afraid to drive her car despite driving for 34 years, and so now requires my mom's assistance as getting about like she deserves a fecking personal chauffeur. Also that she has choice paralysis and doesn't know how to cook of what to cook, again, after being a housewife for 40 years, and that her husband drug her with sleeping pills. I mean, why would he do that? All of these terrible afflictions started when her husband, who is sick of her, basically goes holidaying 812 months of a year with his retirement money. Backstory, she's crazy. She subscribes to this militant section of Islam that tells her that she is a woman, and by virtue of her vagina, means she must have a guardian accompany her when she leaves the house, that photos and give are forbidden. So she burned all photos, including some with my mom without permission, ripped the TV off the wall in a fit of rage, took her Down syndrome child out if a specialist school aged 8, gave him education as she is barely literate, instead insisting he learns Arabic and read the Quran. This boy is he still shits himself and throws 3-year-old style fits, has no life skills. He has never been out alone, and she still holds his hand. He's 18 now. She's so self-centered, always shows up expecting my mom to take her places without so much as a please, or if you're not busy, and she obliges because she feels sorry for her. Also fully bald because some man came up to her in the supermarket and asked for the contact number of her husband, as he was a friend, calling 2 of her grown-up sons at work, one's a lawyer, and the other in tech worker in the middle of the day, demanding they come and tend her. Tend what? Nothing happened. Also claimed that her poor son was nearly abducted by him because his man was engaging in friendly conversation with him, so clearly wanted to lure him into the back of his car. She never asks, but always demands. That one example of millions of non-events she's exaggerated to near-death experiences. She does seem mentally ill, but she's so delusional she refuses to take antidepressants. She claims it's her unwell period where she does silly things like rip TVs off the wall 'cause they're satanic, and she's all fine and cured 'cause she prayed hard enough to God, and he delivered her bullshit. Yet she still calls MG Mom crying that the stand mixer us trying to kill her or some other batshit crazy stuff. Turns up randomly at our house at really inopportune times and just expects to be seated, fed, have her hand held, and talk nonstop about the extreme trial and tribulations of her benefits welfare supported housewife life. And my mom, who works until 56 p.m., has barely had time to sip water before she comes knocking and has to deal with her. I think my mom is too kind-hearted to tell her to stop being such a lying, attention-seeking moron, and is afraid she'll die of a broken heart. But it needs to be said her kids and husband can't stand her, neither can I. I do think there's something mentally very wrong, but she's so stubborn she refuses help from the doctor, won't go for psychiatric evaluation, and gets all offended when you bring up. I think she intentionally plays herself as the victim, because all she ever does is talk about her terrible life. Never ever does anything for anyone, like even ask if they're okay, or free to see her. She demands and expects. She also gets this haughty demeanor when you talk to her about mental health, claiming she's right as rain, and how dare we suggest help of this kind. Thinks God will save her, when she said it's because God is punishing her, or implied that people with mental health issues needed to repent and repair their relationship with God. I almost strangled her. Never have I been so angry. I just fully ranted, but for real, she's a little whiny with princess syndrome. I can't even feel bad for her, because I have no idea if she has a mental illness or is just a narcissistic. But then again, narcissistic personality disorder is a very real struggle for some. It's just that arrogance and stubborn refusal to seek help from professionals, and instead lay it all on family members who have jobs and lives of their own to occupy them while she sits on her, twiddling her thumbs whilst cash flows into her bank account. Her husband is a businessman, and she gets some of the rent they receive from multiple properties they own, contributing nothing to society and not lifting a finger to earn that money she gets. It's her husband who actually bought and arranged those properties, FFS. But yeah, attention seeker is a pale description of this woman. I had a friend who diagnosed herself with depression using a quiz on the internet. She told all her friends, long texts and phone calls about all the things getting her down, and she had a Tumblr full of incredibly depressing reblog posts, including articles about the emotional benefits of self-harm. But maybe she's really depressed, so we just try and help. Then one day, she pretended to have killed herself. Halfway through one of many conversations about her suicidal thoughts, she suddenly stopped replying. This is a girl who never stops replying instantly no matter how dead the conversation is. I text her, call her, telling her I'm worried. Absolutely nothing. I call some people I know in her neighborhood who run to her house to check she's still alive. Found her in her room. Phone right next to her. We all met up the next day with some other friends and told the story. She's constantly making comments about how bad she feels that she worried us. But she's visibly loving every minute of it. She's the center of attention, the center of the drama, and she's having the time of her life. We all drifted apart from her in the months afterwards. One by one, she never tried to pull the same stunt again, but she kept saying and doing things that were clearly cries for attention, and there was just no more attention we could give her without becoming her live-in carers. The last I heard from her was a FB post when her family moved, saying she wasn't sorry to go, and her friend from her hometown would never understand how much they'd hurt her. I don't think it's conscious or malicious at all. She just has a serious problem. TLDR friend decides she's depressed, turns her friends into counselors, then feigns suicide for attention. Story 43, I had a roommate who was fat in high school. She was super skinny when I lived with her 10 years later. Twice a week, she would make a big show out of adjusting her belt and commenting about how she couldn't believe she was buckling the first or second hole in the belt. The first time she did that, I complimented her and meant it. The next 10 times I complimented her and felt irritated that we've had the exact same conversation so many times. The 11th time, I tried to ignore her and not feed in her narcissism. She said my name over and over until I looked up from my phone and acknowledged her. Then she went through her whole belt spiel again, and I sarcastically said congrats. She didn't pick up on my irritation. The 12th time she started with her stupid belt adjusting, I lost my cool and told her off. Told her that I was sick and tired of her fishing for he same compliment multiple times a week. I made her cry, and she acted all but hurt for about a month afterwards. Whatever, at least I wasn't forced to compliment her twice a week after that. Story 44 star Raven Alexis fake brain cancer. NSFW, I knew her fiancé at the time. He confirmed that she was bat, crazy. One time in my youth I posted on my Facebook. Because I was bored, I still shudder when I see my old Facebook posts. Story 45 girl I went to high school was just then worst attention seeker I ever met. always crying, always had an injury or illness of some sort, super jealous and overdramatic about anyone beating her in grades and classes. She was crazy. Once I accidentally whacked her, she was walking behind me. I didn't see her. I realized I had forgotten something and turned Arudi sharply, causing my arm to sort of fling out and catch her in the stomach. And she started bawling her eyes out and went down harder than a pro soccer player losing a game. I mean, it was a pretty good slap, but nothing more than a sharp OUCH at best. But the worst had to be in year 12 when her boyfriend of 6 months dumped her because she was being an abusive cow, always starting fights with him over stupid reasons, being moody, expecting him to do everything, and even hitting him when things didn't go her way. Anyway, so a day after the breakup, she comes to class in normal clothes, no uniform, and is trying to put on a brave face, but tearfully tells the teacher she having a day off for personal reasons, and can she please have some homework to catch up, etc. By the way, her now ex is sitting in this class, just rolling his eyes. When the teacher tells her that she hopes everything is okay, old girlie starts bawling her eyes and says, "In front of the whole class, miss, I think I'm pregnant." And she turns to her ex and screams at him, "Did you hear that? Pregnant?" And then she turns away in the most overly dramatic fashion and started runking to the door, arms and hands flailing and crying like a maniac. The most hilarious thing was she crashed into the closed door. The whole class started laughing, and I swear I even saw the teacher crack a smile. She started flopping against the door, trying to get it open. The class was in tears of laughter by this point. The sad thing was, though, that later that night, at like 12 to 1 a.m., she went to her ex's house and started pelting rocks at his window, screaming and begging him to take her back for the sake of their unborn child.